Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And there is a huge secret in America. And it centers around a substance that we all know too well, don't we? Now, to this day, I am shocked that very few people know that Epipens degrade into adrenochrome. This should be front page news, shouldn't it? This is right out of the package insert from the EpiPen. And we know that this substance is a byproduct of trauma, a byproduct of a huge epinephrine release in the brain that degrades into adrenochrome. And this is the valued substance. Now, if there wasn't all this evidence that this was real and a sought after substance, then we wouldn't be covering it, would we? But this is real, isn't it? And now I'm starting to believe that this whole Epstein thing, Epipens, Epstein, epinephrine, that his name is the precursor to adrenochrome was not an accident. It all seems intentional. It all seems as though his name was named that way for a reason. So here it is. The package insert for EpiPen deteriorates into adrenochrome. Now, the victims of this case have spoken without speaking. If you hadn't heard by now, they released a public service announcement. And you're probably wondering why they just won't release their own list of the thousands of perpetrators going all the way up to the highest levels of government. But it appears as though they've been gagged. And not only have they been gagged, they've been covertly gagged, which is even more insidious. In other words, they can't even reveal the fact that they've been gagged and by who. And that tells you the power of the government to cover things up. We're going to take a look at their public service announcement. Well, let's take a look here, you guys.
Case. Let's take a listen to that.
I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
There are about 1,000 of us.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
That heart.
1,000 victims. And our government tells us that out of those 1,000 victims, that Jeffrey Epstein was the only person involved, and that there were no other government officials, judges, senators, presidents that were attached to Epstein that in any way, shape, or form abused girls. We're told that the trail ends there. That's what they want us to believe, you guys. That they caught the perpetrators. Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. That was it. Do you believe that? I don't. 1,000 victims? We know that he was essentially providing these girls to other people. Where are these other people? Why hasn't our government gone after those people? Now, by now you've probably heard that the House and the Senate voted to release the Epstein files. Now, a lot has to happen before that actually happens. The president has to actually sign this, which he's pretty much going to be forced to do. But here's one thing that will be certain. the files will be redacted. In fact, Epstein's brother claims that they are already scrubbing the files. This is why Trump did an about-face. Jeffrey Epstein's brother, GOP is sanitizing the names from files. That's why Trump now supports the release. Let's see what this says here. Let's see if this plays anything here.
What I do want to talk about is I've been recently told the reason they're going to be releasing these things and the reason for the flip is that they're sanitizing these files. There's a facility in Winchester, Virginia, where they're scrubbing the files to take Republican names out of it.
Wow. In his own words. Now, how might they do this? Well, we're going to read about that. But they're now admitting, mainstream media is admitting, the Epstein emails show that conspiracy theorists are right. Eyes wide shut. Let's read a little bit of this, and then we'll get into how the files might be sanitized politically to benefit the Republicans. It seems there's a code among people with power and money who are pals no matter what side of the aisle, no matter the sins. The shocking revelation in the trove of 20,000 emails from the sordid world of Jeffrey Epstein is not that crimes were being committed. It's more sinister. The emails are disturbing because what they reveal, and in fact prove, is that conspiracy theorists are right. Let that sink in for a minute. We've been gaslighted for decades about things that we've uncovered. And now they're finally admitting that we were right about a lot of these things. So good work to you. You guys are the reason why these things come to light, because you stayed at it. I always have told you guys, it takes courage to swim against the current. That's true courage. It's easy to go along with the right or the left because you have everyone at your back that's on your side. You know, they make fun of us for echo chambers. Well, the true echo chambers is the right-left paradigm, reinforcing unoriginal ideas. The hardest and most courageous thing to do is think for yourself and to contemplate things that could be going on, to look at predictive programming while everybody's calling you crazy, but yet you know something is not right. That's the most courageous thing you can do, because you lose family, you lose friends. People call you crazy every day. You can't even talk about these things with most people. That is true courage and bravery. Let's keep reading here. That their theories of full-on corruption in the upper spheres where power lies are valid. That the eyes wide shut cabal of political and financial interests married to sexual deviants depicted in Stanley Kubrick's 1999 film is not, in fact, fiction. It is reality. So often journalists like myself attempt to demonstrate to family members and voters in the far reaches of the country, away from the centers of power and money, that their conspiracies are false, that politicians are flawed, but that corruption is not the norm. It isn't how we all operate. But the Epstein emails suggest otherwise. They suggest that, in fact, there's a widespread code among people with power and money who support one another. They are pals no matter what side of the aisle. This is what we've been trying to tell you. There is no true right and left. It's all pretend. They are in the club no matter the sins of their members, transgressions that get contextualized, explained away, understood. I'll leave a link to this story. This is something you can share with your family who doubted you this whole time about the things that you were learning about. Now, how could the files be sanitized? This is the Los Angeles Times. Could Trump destroy the Epstein files? Well, in political exile at the mansion in Florida under investigation for possessing... Okay, let's fast forward through this. They're talking about a past case. Trump's purported willingness to conceal evidence from law enforcement as a private citizen is now fueling concern on Capitol Hill that his efforts to thwart the release of the Justice Department files in the Epstein investigation could lead to similar obstructive efforts. Since resuming office in January, Trump has opposed releasing files from the federal probe into the conduct of his former friend, Epstein. Last week, facing intensifying public pressure, House Oversight Committee released the emails. Those files, which included emails from Epstein himself, showing the notorious financier believed that Trump had intimate knowledge of his criminal conduct. He knew about the girls, he wrote. So, they're saying that he could go through and essentially either stonewall the process, or Pam Bondi can go in and redact anything she wants. The bill prohibits the attorney. Here's some of the nuts and bolts of this. The bill prohibits the Attorney General Pam Bondi from withholding, delaying, or redacting the publication of any record, document, communication, or investigative material on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. So that's the law. But caveats in the bill could provide Trump and Bondi with loopholes to keep records related to the president concealed. Because DOJ possesses and controls these files, it is far from certain that a vote to disclose the Epstein files will include documents pertaining to Donald Trump. Wow. Already this past spring, Cashapp directed a Freedom of Information Act team to work with hundreds of agents to comb through the entire trove of files from the investigation and directed them to redact references to Trump. So Trump's already been scrubbed from the files. Wow. So this could end up being a big nothing sandwich. Now, what else is going on? Well, Fox News is already starting to run cover for Epstein with claims by Megyn Kelly that he was not even a pedo. And there are other Fox News talking heads running cover for Trump already, as Trump is also pretending now to want to release the files. Wow. So what I believe is going to happen is the winners and losers are already chosen politically. They were making deals behind closed doors, likely, and one side will emerge squeaky clean. Now, how did we get here? Well, some of these, celebrities and actors and actresses have been leaking some of this stuff out for some time. This is Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie. Everybody remembers Laura Ingalls. And in plain sight, in front of millions of people, there was a man 10 years older than her when she was at the age of 15 in the notorious kissing scene. And even though she's never, accused Michael Landon of any wrongdoing, the inference is that it was all happening in plain sight. And they tried to write this off as, oh, that's because we were depicting what was in the book. We were depicting what Laura Ingalls was really like, and this really happened. Okay, that might have happened 100 or 200 years ago, but why are they redepicting it and cinematizing it in modern times? That makes absolutely no sense. I have no words other than to say I was a child. I was 15. Wow. Unbelievable. So, this is the truth about our country. The ugly secret just beneath the surface. Here are some other stories that emerged over the years. Billy Bob Thornton now all of a sudden, at this moment in history, wants to come out and explain the famous blood vial necklaces. Is this a clue that something's going to be revealed about adrenochrome in these files? Why is he mansplaining now about this? Wow. And look at this. Look how dark these two were. Never understood this relationship. What a weird and bizarre relationship. He was, of course, so much older than her. But the point is that she probably could have been with anyone in Hollywood. Later, she went on to be with Brad Pitt. But somehow, Billy Bob Thornton got his hands on her to the point to where they were in some weird blood oath thing where they had these blood necklaces. Remember this? And now Billy Bob Thornton wants to explain that these little lockets only had a drop of blood in them. Like, that's supposed to make it any better. He goes on to explain that it was her idea to take a razor blade and cut their finger and drop a blood into this locket. And he went along with it, so he says. And then he talks about how they were accused of being vampires and everything else, that they live in a dungeon and drink blood and all this stuff. Look how creepy this is. Now, we did a decode on Angelina Jolie. I'm going to show that to you now. We're going to finish up the show with this. There's also a 2019 Economist cover in this, which might apply to today. Let's kind of go through this, and I'll skip through. So if you hear skipping, that's what it is. Let me put it on a little bit faster speed so you don't have to listen to my slow talking. Let's take a look here, you guys. What is happening in the Ukraine and Russia? Let's fast forward over there in the spiritual realm. What we're going to do here, we have to be very clear. Okay, let's go past that because we're not talking about Ukraine anymore. Let's hear aspects of what all this means. Rituals. I was doing some research into this, and what I found was just chilling. That these tattooed symbols have meaning, and they enhance the magic of voodoo. Let's read about voodoo tattoos, and then we'll get into the spiritual aspects of what all this means. Here are some tattoos that are involved with voodoo, and they represent each of the voodoo gods. As you can see here, here's Baron Samedi. There's also Arzuli, Avizon. Here's some more, which are pretty much the same ones, but this is a little bit easier to read. These are tattoos that people put on their bodies to enhance the effects of voodoo. Now, this show is very important because this goes to the very root of everything that we're doing on this channel. We are fighting their magic, aren't we? And for some reason, God has given us the eyes to see to help people wake up from the spell that they are under. So here are the different gods, and again, they use these symbols tattooed on people's bodies to enhance the magic. Now let me read about this. This is from one of their own sites, Voodoo Doll Tattoos, Symbols. If you want to get a voodoo tattoo, you might want to include some of the more magical components. These voodoo symbols are much more accessible and common in Haitian voodoo. There are many artists who create designs specifically meant for magic effects. One such design is a variant of something called a legba. Now, the legba appears in these images here. I'm not going to go back to them, but these legbas stand as a connection between our world and the spirit world, and communication between the two often starts there. The presence of both beneficial spirits made up of all your predecessors as well as negative spirits that lead their own lives is a common voodoo belief. Tattoos are often believed to be imbued with magical power. So there are even some symbols meant to protect the user from the possession of evil spirits or call for help from their ancestors. Now, of course, all of this is blasphemy and spellcasting, all the abominations that the Bible talks about. And in fact, in the Old Testament, God made a covenant with his peoples saying, do not tattoo your body. I don't know how that applies today under our covenant under Christ. And I don't know if this is, I'm not judging people who have tattoos. Most people have tattoos now. It's like the way the world is now. But understand there could be some magic and sorcery associated to this that you didn't know about to this point. And so you need to confront that maybe in your life and pray on it. Maybe things are going wrong in your life because of something you put on your body. Let's keep reading here. The guardian of this knowledge is known as Grand Bois, who is a spirit associated with mapu trees. He also guards all things, including magic, secrets, and healing. Voodoo tattoos are concepts, and concepts are not only representations of just one culture and religion. There are hundreds of tribes in northern Africa when the American slave trade began, and every one of those tribes had very distinct traditions. Even the collection of different cultures that we call voodoo has several distinct types. When getting a voodoo tattoo, you are the only one who decides its significance and meaning, since it is a representation of yourself and your spirituality, and whatever purpose you give it is the meaning that will stick. It's interesting because I've talked to people who've gotten tattoos, and almost every person I talk to either regrets it or they want more tattoos. It's never really in the middle. There's definitely something to that. And they talk about that it reminded them of their past life, or they feel labeled because of the tattoo that's on them of their previous life that maybe they've moved on from, but they can't remove it from their body. So what they're saying here actually makes sense, that this thing attaches to you and you can't get rid of it. Now, here's what else was revealed to me in a vision night before last. That the black ink used for the tattoos is a metaphor for the blue blood black goo. And that this whole thing we went through for the last 3 years was basically one giant voodoo ritual spell, complete with a needle and a tattoo, something that sticks with you that you can't get rid of. And so the entire world is under a voodoo spell. Now, that's about all I can say about that, and Tom will help you if you're lost about what exactly I'm talking about. Now, here's where we go on to even a deeper level. Because, in fact, what is voodoo really? When you think about what it really is, it's the creation of an inanimate object or a counterfeit scenario. In the case that we know about is a doll. That's usually what they use, right? But it can also be just a fake story or a counterfeit scenario, can it? And then the sorcerer harms or manipulates or controls that fake image so that it manifests in the true reality. That is the base tenet of the religion of voodoo. And so here's what was revealed to me. That's Hollywood. What do you mean, Casey? Well, they create all these counterfeit or fake scenarios in movies, don't they? And in commercials and film. And then they manipulate those characters, which manifests into our reality. Now, most people call this programming. But now that I explained it to you in the way that I just did, it's actually a form of voodoo magic, isn't it? Look at all the decodes we've done. Thousands of decodes over the last 10 years of things created in Hollywood and then manifesting in reality. It's voodoo. Now understand that the spell that has been cast is one of a strong delusion. And maybe that's what this is all about. The strong delusion. Now, we had covered the cult of Jab Jab not too long ago, didn't we? Which also comes out of voodoo ritual. During the Jab Jab carnival, they would cover themselves in black goo or ink, and they would wear devil horns. And here's another clue. I dug deeper because I wanted to find out about black ink or ink used in tattoos. And look at this. There's actually very high levels of copper in tattoo ink. Here's the study. Let me pull it up here so you can see the title. A survey of metals found in tattoo inks. This is from 2017. And down here, you see, let's make this bigger so everybody can see this. Uh-oh. What just happened right there? Okay, here we go. It says here that these heavy metals exist in the tattoo ink. Iron was observed in nearly 90% of the ink samples and is suspected to be in the form of iron oxide, which is a known darkener used in tattoo inks. Iron is not usually considered as a toxin. However, some of the inks with this exceptionally high iron concentrations may be a cause for concern, as iron can be potentially harmful at very high concentrations and can cause problems with cardiovascular, central nervous system, kidney, liver, blood. The metals of highest concern, particularly chromium, nickel, copper, barium, and lead, can be seen below in figure 2.6. I'll show you that in a second. Ink samples containing copper above this is like safe levels. Samples were grouped by brand, and only brands with more than 10 ink samples were used. So here is the actual levels of copper in all these different brands. There were 10 different brands looked at, and they show the parts per million of copper in each one. Now, to give fair balance here, the article says that the form that the copper is in shouldn't cause a problem because it's like bound. We're talking about a spiritual manifestation here, that copper is even in these inks and what it means on a spiritual level, which we've covered, right? The mixing of the blue and red blood together. This is what the enemy wants. So, of course, he's going to dab a little bit of his copper into these tattoo inks to drive the point home, because this is all about piercing the flesh, isn't it? Let's keep reading about copper in tattoo inks. Figure 4 shows the copper distribution between brands and shows more or less uniformity among manufacturers compared to the previous figures. The widespread presence of copper in high concentrations in tattoo pigments is most likely associated with copper phthalocyanin, blue BN, and phthalocyanin, green ink pigments that have been used in tattoos for almost 100 years. While copper can cause anemia, liver and kidney damage, as well as stomach and intestinal irritation, it is thought to be relatively safe when it is bound to phthalocyanin. So this is the part I was telling you that it's actually, they're saying it's safe. During tattoo removal procedure, however, this metal ion would be freed from its phthalocyanin cage and would dissolve into the bloodstream. So when you go and get a tattoo removed, watch out. If you're starting to have anemic symptoms and you've just had a tattoo removed, it's probably because your body just got flooded with copper. Let's keep reading here. Distributions of metals found in tattoo inks sorted by color are shown in Figure 7. Bright green inks were found to contain high concentrations of chromium, manganese, iron, copper, bromine, barium, as well as traces of lead. Yellow inks contain similarly substantial amounts of chromium, iron, nickel, and barium, and traces of lead. High concentrations of copper and bromine were found to be present in blue inks. So, this is a concern. It says here, while a few of these elements are considered non-toxic, a majority of these findings are cause for concern because it is well established that chromium, manganese, nickel, copper, bromine, barium, and lead, all of which were commonly found in tattoo inks, have adverse health effects. So, that is the study, and I'll link this, of course. I know a lot of people have tattoos that probably come to this channel, so just understand what you're dealing with. Again, this isn't about judgment. This is about getting down to the truth, and on our path to finding the truth, I came across this, so I have to present it to you. Now, I didn't find any voodoo tattoos on Angelina Jolie, because that's where this rabbit hole started, didn't we? But she did live in the heart of Creole voodoo country, in the French district of New Orleans. Her and her husband, ex-husband now, Brad Pitt, bought a house there. And then one of you sent me these images of where she supposedly put too much powder on her face going to this movie premiere. And I was like, wait a minute. Let's look at some of these other images of her with too much powder on her face. How did Brad sitting right next to her, and no one seems to notice or tell her, which tells me that it was likely intentional. Now, why would she be putting powder on her face? Here's Brad right next to her here. Hon, you got too much powder on your face. Anyone who's ever had a significant other, you know, you do this. You tell your significant other, because no one else is going to tell him, right? She's, popular actress. You got to let people know, hey, you got lint on your back, or you got powder, or you got a little stain there, right? So what is this really all about? Well, I think I know what it's all about, or could be all about. Let's go back to this image here and do a little comparison. Because I looked at these ancient voodoo gods and look at what I found. All of them have the white powder on their face. Here's Papa Legba. And on your right of your screen, Baron Samedi, same thing. The white powder on the face. And maybe this is what she was after. I don't want to focus too much on these images because they stay with you. And so we're not going to get caught up on that. But needless to say, the very same white face, which begs the question, was she doing this intentionally for some reason? Now, here's where this gets personal. And then we'll get into the 2019 Economist cover. What most of you don't know is that all right. Well, I'll put a link to this. Wow, that's crazy. So we tied in tattoos, curses, and Baron Samedi and voodoo and the whole ritual of the, the jabs and everything, the black ink, right? The blue blood, all that stuff. It all fits together, you guys. All right, I'm back in the chat. And again, I'll put a link to that and all the other stories we covered. All right, let's go in here. What's going on with you guys? Horse involvement too. Why would they screen horse involved? That's crazy. What's up with the censorship, man? We must have like some weird AI that harasses our chat because they're censoring things that shouldn't be censored. This is why I always show you guys the back end here of the channel so you can see what's up. Christy says, okay, well, they got to see that, so, okay. My goodness. The Shining Ones, Tuatha De Danann, says Sadicus. That's how that translates. Wow. Remember we decoded the Shining Girls? That was crazy. All right. All right. Yeah, just be careful. If you go to remove a tattoo, that's when it releases the heavy metals. So you just got to be prepared for that. Right now it's bound. But, you know, if you move on from that period of your life, those tattoos don't go away. And we all grow, don't we? I'm kind of a different person in a lot of aspects than I was when I was younger. I'll tell you a story. So I wonder if that was the story I was going to tell you in that show, the re-upload show that I just played. But when I was in college, I had a best friend. I won't tell you his name just out of privacy. But he had me draw a picture of the Cookie Monster for a tattoo. So I drew it on a napkin and he took it into the tattoo parlor and he literally got the Cookie Monster on his arm. And I was supposed to get the animal from, you know, the drummer, because that was my favorite character from Sesame Street. You guys all know who the animal is. And so that was supposed to, but I chickened out. So I did not get the animal. Now, as a 52-year-old man, could you imagine if I had the animal tattooed on my arm? Obviously, completely different time in my life. So that's why I'm glad I don't have any tattoos. But again, that's not judgment. It's just for people that, you know, maybe are considering getting one. They needed to see this show. So the animal. Yeah, I was chicken. So that friend from college, he's in his 50s. He has the Cookie Monster on his arm right now, unless he got it removed. This guy's over Spokane was 40 before they got their first tat. All right, what else is going on, you guys? Yeah, it's kind of like marriage, right? They make it so easy to get married. It's one piece of paper, but to get a divorce, it's 100 times harder. Reliving the failure, going through the paperwork. Oh my gosh. If they made it just as hard to get married, I don't think many people would be making wrong choices about marriage, to be honest with you. Can you imagine if it was just as hard to get married as it was to get a divorce? Like, wow, right? Let's say it took a year to get married. Well, how do you guys think that would change things? Marty says, did the Xterra blow up? No, the Xterra just started running really weird. It would run okay for a while, and then as soon as it would get warmed up, it would start missing and sputtering, or it would just die while I was driving, and then the power steering would go out when the car died. I literally have to start it while I was, you know, going up a hill or down a hill or whatever. So my best friend Mike in Arkansas purchased the car from me, and you know, for pretty much next to nothing. And he's a car dealer. He has a car dealer license, so he purchased it. And it's actually sitting at his house. He might fix it up for his wife, but it needs a lot of engine. There's something going on with the engine, or I don't know, couldn't figure it out. So I've had a different car for the last, I guess it's been a year and a half, 2 years. A newer car. The one you saw in the video where they were going through my car, that was my car. I wanted to keep the Xterra, but once you start getting into the brain of a car and it starts having problems like that, I mean, because I had already thrown a couple $1,000s at that car before I got rid of it over the course of a couple years. I had 6 different mechanics work on it. Nobody could figure out what it was. All the spark plugs, wires, all that was replaced. And then I'd take it to the next mechanic and he would say the exact same thing. Oh, let's replace all the spark plugs and wires. I'm like, I just did that. Like, obviously you didn't look under the hood. You're just throwing money at it. So I was done. I was like, time to move on from the Nissan Xterra. That was a beautiful truck. Beautiful truck. You know, what's crazy is I have another Nissan now. It's a Pathfinder, but it's crazy because they call it a truck, but it's really built on a car chassis, which increases the gas mileage significantly. Like, I would have never did the trip out to California with the Xterra. It's just not a car you take, 1,000 miles across the country. It's not comfortable. It kind of hurts to drive in it for long distances. It's kind of cramped. But my newer car is lower profile. It's built on a car chassis and way better gas mileage. I probably save hundreds of dollars just in fuel, So it's pretty easy to make the change when the old car isn't running right. So thanks for the question. Okay, Trump never abused children. Okay, how do you know that? How do you know that? What man do you know that knows that his best friend is doing that to children that didn't call the cops, right? If I knew that somebody was doing that, I would call the police. Or I'd let everybody know. So that gives you an indication. I mean, none of us know for sure, but if there's 1,000 victims that were associated with Epstein, and obviously they're being gagged because they can't name names, right? All they can do is that public service announcement. Somebody is threatening them something. They can't talk. Otherwise, we'd be hearing about the 1,000 victims, right? And who else was involved. So obviously, there's a whole group of people that were involved with Epstein that shared in this behavior who we don't know about. Are you willing to bet your life that he absolutely was not involved? He was the closest person to Epstein during those years. He was his best friend. Are you willing to bet your life? Are you willing to bet $1 million? Are you willing to bet? I wouldn't. I would say it's 80-20 at best. So yeah, Epstein was just middle management. He was just the one pulling the strings. But there was a whole network of rich and powerful people attached to him. And if we're stupid enough to believe that it was only Ghislaine and Epstein, and these 1,000 victims, and there were no other people involved, then we deserve what we get. If we are stupid enough to believe that, then we deserve what we get. We've got to step outside the right-left paradigm. And I'm not a Democrat. I don't like democratic policies and morality, but this is the truth. And if we can't call out our own side when they're doing wrong, then again, we deserve what we get. And see, they've got us in this thing where someone gets to win and all this. I'm not saying I believe Epstein's brother. I just read to you the proof of what Pam Bondi can do if she wants to, and that Kash Patel already went through and scrubbed, his name, Trump's name, out of the files. I don't know what else you need to see. They admit that. So it's not about believing Epstein's brother. It's about the facts. So, but thanks for the discussion. Thanks for being polite. I welcome alternative viewpoints. But, yeah, I wouldn't bet my life on it. Heck no. Would not bet my life on that. All right. What else, you guys? Hang out for a little bit longer. It's kind of a quick show today. My Honda is 20 years old, nearly 200,000 miles. Good job, Tanette. Yeah, I was the second owner of the Xterra. So what happened was, when you don't know the whole service history, you don't really know the vehicle, you don't know what you're dealing with and working with. And I just had poor mechanics. My mechanics really just wanted to replace parts. and couldn't get down to the bottom of the issue. So that was my situation. But hey, if you've got an original vehicle, you know what you're dealing with. You know, they used to have what they call an engine transfer. I did this to one of my vehicles early in life, you know, right after I got out of college. I had an old Honda Accord, and the engine had some miles on it. I did an engine exchange. They still have those now, but they're a lot more expensive than they used to be. So the engine exchange, basically, I guess in other countries like Japan, they only allow the engines to get up to 50,000 miles. And then it's required that the car is either taken off the road or they have to junk the car. And it's because of emissions. So if you they'll remove the engines and then they sell them in America with only 50,000 miles on them, which is nothing, right? So they have them. I remember when I did this with my Honda Accord years ago, there were all these engines sitting on a floor in a warehouse, and they're like, pick one. I picked one, and then you have to have a mechanic put it in for you. Sounds simple, but with labor and mechanics these days, I think back then it was $1,000, maybe 500 for them to install the engine, and then the engine was like $500. It was super cheap back then, but now I can imagine it's probably several $1,000s for the engine and the labor. But that's how you can extend the life of your car, or used to be able to anyway, if you want to keep it. It's called an engine exchange program. So what else is going on? Have I seen Snake Eyes? How it had to do with Charlie. Yeah, we did a whole series of shows on it. Most of them are viral, 20, 30, 40,000 views, I think. That was late September. Late September is when we uploaded those series of videos. It's here on the channel under the live shows. And the reason why I think it went viral is because we had already covered Snake Eyes and connected it to Trump like 5 years before that. So then we see the Charlie Kirk connection, and it was like mind blown. Wow, Japan is being trashed with immigrants as well. I had no idea they had an immigration problem. Sacramento has an engine exchange. Thanks, Sister G. Yeah, that might have been where I got mine years ago. Oh, gosh, it was back in like 90, I want to say 93 or 94 is when I did that. I officially have Trump derangement syndrome, probably because you are black. That's pretty funny. Some people are going to hang on till the very end, you guys. Even when the files come out and it shows everything, people will still hold on to Trump. Yeah, they will. What you don't understand, and what's funny, is yes, I am black, but I'm conservative values, and I actually don't believe in true racism the way that you might think that I would. Because to compare what we're going through today as black people to what happened in the 60s, that's a travesty to the people that had to experience things in the 60s. Way different situation. We have like a lot of rights now, and we have opportunity. And I've shared that opportunity with you guys before. I know some people just like to troll, but sometimes trolls get traction. So you have to call them out, you know. My dislike of Trump has absolutely nothing to do with if I think he's a racist, because I really actually don't believe he is. I think the people in power, it's classism. They have power and they all secretly hate us. They pretend like they like us, but they all secretly hate the rest of us. So Cat Am was a teenager in the 60s. Yeah, and it wasn't like that across the entire country. I guess the South was a lot worse. But, you know, my great-great-grandmother was like, I guess she was half white. And she married, but she looked like super white. Like nobody knew she had any black in her. And she married my great-great-grandfather, who was from the Cayman Islands. He was literally descended from African slaves. I have his passport. I have pictures of all this on my Facebook. And they had an interracial, it looked like an interracial marriage, and they lived in California where things were much better in the 50s and 60s. And so, yeah, they bought a house together and all that. So, and then I tell you the story of my parents who both were state workers. My dad was in corrections. My mother was a state worker, retired, and got really far in life with very little education. We were able to purchase homes and all that stuff. I went to college, finished college. A lot of opportunities for people that want to apply themselves, you know, and I came from a poor upbringing. So, yeah, that nice try, though. Nice try. Nice try. I don't see, you know, yeah, I agree with you. Some people have attitudes against black people. I see it here on YouTube. There's a channel I caught wind of, Pearl Daily. And, you know, some of the things that they say, the attitudes towards black people is wow. You're like, wow, they can actually, they say that now. They come right out and tell you that they're, you know, they're getting black fatigue and these things. Okay. So now, does that make them a racist? No, I believe that true racism is someone being able to affect your livelihood. I don't care what someone feels about me. In the same way, I don't care if someone says to me, oh, I don't date black people. That's fine. That's your preference. You can't hold that against somebody. That's a preference. They might even have things they might say about black people and why they don't date them. Again, it's no different than someone who prefers brunettes, or someone who prefers redheads, or someone who prefers tall women or short women or heavy women or skinny women, right? And they might have things that they say about those people, misconceptions, preconceived notions. Is that some kind of ism or racism or whatever ism? No, these are preferences. And some of those preferences and attitudes and opinions about those groups might sound cruel even. But are they standing in the way of you getting a job? Are they standing in the way of you going to college if you want to? Are they standing in the way of you purchasing a car or getting a car loan? If there was ever an example of how racism, true racism, doesn't exist, it would be a black man moving into a 99.99% white community and being accepted and welcomed. And I'm sure there are a few people in the community that are like, who is that guy? I don't like him, or I don't trust him. But do I ever run into them? No. And so that should be a prime example. And then, of course, I get all the other backlash. Well, you're not really black. I guess they didn't go look on my Facebook. I've got pictures of me. I've got very black features. You know I'm black. I just have a little bit lighter shade of skin tone. But I am a black man. I'm a very black man. No, you don't sound black. Well, it's about where you grow up, you know. I didn't grow up around a lot of black people because that's not where I lived growing up. So, you know, none of that matters. What matters is you could be anybody. And if you carry yourself a certain way, and there are opportunities for you, it doesn't matter what color you are. That's the fact of the matter. And yeah, some people aren't going to like you because of your color, but as long as they're not saying you can't use that bathroom or that water fountain, then is that true racism? I don't believe it is. Now, some people disagree. I've heard all kinds of stuff. I get attacked by my own people more than I do anybody. They're like, you just pander to white people. I'm like, listen to yourself. I'm like, listen to yourself. And then I give examples of how true racism doesn't exist anymore, and it hasn't for a while. And, you know, they're like, what about racial profiling? The very same people who won't stand up for the Hispanics that are literally being stopped in the street because they're Hispanic, walking while being Hispanic, and ask for their papers. And guess what? You know, as black people, we can show a driver's license and not have a criminal record and be polite. And 99% of officers will be like, hey, no problem. Thanks for going easy on me. I experienced it. I was pulled over in Arkansas. The guy was so nice. He's like, I'm really sorry about this, that I have to do this ID, you know, while they're driving, right? But for the Hispanics right now, you could literally be pulled over and almost deported if you don't have your correct credentials. Even if you're an American citizen, this is what could happen to you. Now, some people, I don't understand why people wouldn't stand up for that, because those erosion of rights is coming for the rest of us. They're just the group that's on the chopping block right now, but they'll just shift the focus on different groups at will. If we give our government that power, this is what they're going to do. Find a different way to deport people. You can't just racially profile people and ask them for their papers. You can't do that. So, sound is cutting out. How's that? Is that better? Oh boy, they don't want us talking about that. Oh boy, can you guys hear me now? Let's see here. Let's go on here. Can you hear me? Testing, testing. Oh boy, can't talk about that. Okay. I don't know what that was about. Jeez. Which part of the story did you guys miss? I don't know. You can't win. Jeez. You were buffering. You must have struck an over. Yeah, they don't like it when people talk outside of the right-left paradigm. Here I am trying to explain to you to bring races together and to show you how racism isn't real unless somebody can stand it. I don't care what someone thinks about me. That doesn't bother me. Someone can call me a nappy. You know, they can even use the N-word. I don't care. I'll just laugh at them. I'll just say, good luck on how far that's going to get you in life. And then, still cutting sound. Okay, I don't know what's going on, you guys. I already checked the mic. It's not that. It's YouTube messing with us. Dropping real truth. But whatever. Wow. Yeah, you can't racially profile people and deport them. I mean, you can deport them, but you can't racially profile people. Okay, I agree with deporting people that are here illegally. They've done something illegally, but that's not what they're doing. They're literally looking at Hispanic people and saying, show me your papers. And if, let's say, okay, let me give you an example. Okay. There's a black person who's racially profiled. They're pulled over and they're asked for their driver's license. Well, their driver's license is like suspended, but guess what? Okay, you get a ticket. They might tow your car. Fine. But, you know, you're breaking the law anyway because your driver's license is suspended, but you're not going to get deported. They're literally trying to deport people that are American citizens that are Hispanic, or they're at least putting them in detention. So now you go to detention until they can verify your identity, right? All right, you guys. Well, I'm going to pop off here since we're having issues. I love each and every one of you, and I'll get this fixed tomorrow. I don't know what's going on. I just think we were just talking about something they don't want us to talk about. I checked all my cords. Everything was fine, so. All right. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about so that we can keep getting censored? Nope, I'm not aligned with the Democrats. I just explained that as soon as you fall into that paradigm, you're going to lose. You're going to get confused. You're not going to think rationally. I said the tactics that are being used. You can't racially profile someone. Okay, let's say the Democrats get power again. And they go to you and they say, we're going to target anyone who's wearing a MAGA hat. So you're in a MAGA hat and now Democrat cops pull you over because you're in a MAGA hat, right? And then they go through your social media profile and they say, okay, you were associated with MAGA, and they're going to call that a terrorist organization now, right? This is what they're going to do or could do. Do you think that's fair? No, of course not. Of course not. Now, of course, as a MAGA person, you didn't do anything wrong per se. You didn't break the law. But, maybe they'll make up a rule that says you broke the law. Who knows? The issue is we live in America. You can't just ask people for their papers based on their appearance. That's not a Democrat thing. That's just common sense. That's the Constitution. You got to find a different way to do it. And we've come up with solutions. You don't go through and just harass regular old American citizens suspecting that they're not, legal here legally. You go after the employers. Okay? They're the ones breaking the laws, keeping the illegals here by giving them jobs. Where are the stiff fines? Where are the felony offenses for undermining national security by harboring and hiring illegals? Why isn't that in the front page news? So that's the solution. Guess what? Let's say they pass a bill tomorrow and says, okay, there's now a felony. You can literally lose your business, your entire business. Your license will be revoked to operate your business if it is found that you hired an illegal. Now, the businesses will come up with all these excuses in the world, but at the end of the day, if they are, I remember every single job I had, they said, you have to provide your social security card and your driver's license. If you don't have two forms of identification, they won't hire you. That was every single job I ever had. And if employers aren't doing that and they're hiring people illegally, they deserve to get a felony. Sorry. I'd rather have that. Because guess what? The reason why they hire illegals is because they can underpay them, not pay them benefits or whatever. And I'm not saying all employers do that. I'm saying they're getting something for cheaper. Okay? And that's not fair. That to me is a better way to go about this rather than door to door, city to city, house to house, harassing people that look Hispanic who are citizens of America. I mean, how are we okay with this? How are we okay with this? I don't know how. Because next year, it's going to be a different group. The year after that, it's going to be a different group. And when it comes to your group, you're going to be like, help. Somebody help. This isn't fair. Okay? We got to step outside the paradigm, you guys. Anyway, I'll let you guys go. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I love you. Have a great rest of your day, you guys. Take care.